Hey guys, welcome to our first video lesson on the Cold War. Today we're going to hit an introduction to this 45-year-long conflict, and we'll continue talking about it over the next couple of class periods. Keep in mind a couple expectations. As usual, guys, make sure you're watching the whole video, and I need you to hear my voice, right? So use those headphones, use closed captioning, or play that sound out loud. All right, in your notes, you've got a box for your essential question. Write that one down. Today, that is, we're going to figure out who fought in the Cold War and why did they oppose each other. So in this video, we're going to cover four things. We're going to cover what does a Cold War mean. Then we'll talk about who is fighting. After that, we'll cover why they are fighting. And we'll finish up by talking about two vocabulary words that often confuse people, and those are communism and capitalism. So box number one, what is a Cold War? So in every war we've talked about so far in this class, it's been a hot war. It's been a war where actual fighting has taken place between countries. Like in the Vietnam War, we had different sides fighting and shooting each other. That is a hot war. A Cold War looks a little bit different. A Cold War is when neither side actually fights or confronts each other directly in the battlefield. So it's a little icy, right? It's a little passive aggressive. They're not actually bringing their weapons to the table and shooting at each other. This Cold War is going to look a little different from the conflicts we've studied. My formal definition for you, and write this one down in the box too, is the Cold War we're going to be studying that, as you can see, lasts a very long time, 1947, so right after World War II, all the way to 1991. Is going to be this period of it's a really tense relationship between us, the United States, and all of our allies, and the Soviet Union and all of their allies. So the Soviet Union is also called the USSR. Those are kind of interchangeable terms. And so you can see in my diagram here, it's kind of like we're playing this really, really long chess match between the two countries. These are the two superpowers left after World War II. And we'll talk about World War II closer to Christmas, closer to our holiday break. But these are the two countries pretty much left with lots of power after that war, and we are in opposition of each other. So we don't fight each other directly. We use our pawns, we move the chess pieces to fight smaller conflicts known as proxy wars. And so if you're not familiar with the term Soviet Union or USSR, we're talking mostly about present-day Russia, right? The big old country on the map, biggest one on the map. Soviet Union includes them and a couple others from Eastern Europe, and they're no longer called the Soviet Union anymore. They break up after this conflict. That's where in the world we are talking about. So we'll finish up with our final two boxes, right? So box number three, why they are fighting. So I've kind of narrowed it down to two reasons why we are fighting the Cold War. The first I'm calling Soviet aggression, because one of the reasons why our relationship turns a little sour is that the leader of the Soviet Union at the time, a man named Joseph Stalin, who you might be familiar with, but if not, we'll cover him later. After World War II, he makes a decision to create basically this buffer zone between the Soviet Union and the West for their protection. He wants to create basically a safety zone using other countries nearby, and we call that kind of aggressive because everybody has their own territory, and he's kind of pushing the boundary to give the Soviets more space. After World War II, we're a little nervous at that. We're going to see some similar things that the Germans did that kind of look like this, and it makes us nervous. And the second reason I call secrecy, because we were allies with the Soviets in World War II. And the United States at this time, we've created a lot of amazing technology and scientific advances. One of those things is creating atomic weapons, nuclear weapons, and we have the recipe, we have the secret sauce, and we refuse to share it. We're not quite comfortable giving that away. I'm sorry about that weird noise in the background. That is my automatic cat feeder. Yep. If you're curious, I'll explain more about that later. Moving on. Number four, box number four, opposing ideologies. So we know that the Cold War is this conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union, and at the heart of that conflict is that we just don't believe in the same structure. And we call that opposing ideologies. So we've got capitalism on the left and communism on the right. And we're basically kind of fighting for how we think the world should be, kind of pushing our own ideologies on the rest of the world. And so capitalism is the one most of us are most familiar with. So we'll start there. Capitalism is the United States system. And it's a system where all of our things, all of our property are owned by people, not the government, right? You own your house, or your parents own your house. The government does not own that thing. And our political system we would describe as a democracy because government is by the people. And of course, we have lots of problems with that all throughout our history, but that's the core of the structure, is that government is run by individual people. This whole unit, we're going to be comparing this with communism, which is the ideology of the Soviet Union or the USSR. And this is a system where all those resources, those units of production, like our mines, factories which create things, farms which feed people, all of that is owned by the government. And all the wealth that is created, all the money that's created is split between people equally or based on their need. And the idea is, no one goes hungry in a system like this. It is equal. These ideologies oppose each other. And we're going to see throughout this entire conflict that we're each kind of fighting for our ideology to spread throughout the world. And so this is my final slide. This is what I'm going to leave you on. And I know these are complicated vocabulary words, so we're going to continue diving into this in our next activity. So go ahead and finish up your summary, read over those notes, and then flip your page over and read the instructions of what to do next.